three sections, three scenes if you will, and in the first scene you can imagine the speaker of the poem, a woman, who is sitting at a table pulling the bones out of a piece of fish with a pair of tweezers, and there's a man in the room. And in the second scene, or second section, we go on this journey through history and culture, meditating on bones. And there's an allusion to Ezekiel and the dry bones that came to life in the Bible. And there's also an allusion to this church in the Czech Republic, in Kutná Hora, that is decorated with the bones of 40,000 people. And in the third section of the poem, we come back to the woman and the man, and they're at a bonfire. And a bonfire, the term is a derivation of bone fire, which during the medieval time was used to ward off evil spirits. And bon is also the French word for good. The poem is called Tweezing the Bones, and there's an epigraph from Shakespeare: fill all thy bones with aches. 1. I sit at the table, 2 slabs of raw salmon before me, and tweeze the center ridge of bones, a picket fence, God's perfect teeth from the pink flesh. Other bones I find with my fingers, pressing to feel the spiky tips, the delicate spindles, that I pinch with the metal tips, then lay in a row on the dark wood, bone by arced bone, slivers of glass or moon. We could just as easily nudge the cooked meat against our teeth and use our tongues to find the tiny daggers, pull them from our mouths before we swallow. But when I'm done, I'll tell you this flesh is safe, picked clean, even as you stand across the room, arms folded, flinging your words like knives. 2. In the valley of bones, Ezekiel prophesied to dry ribs and femurs scattered on the ground. Sun-bleached skulls rolled to vertebra that clicked into place, tibia stretched and phalanges snapped. The bones rattled as they came together, then tendons and skin and breath. They stood on their feet, a vast army, strong-boned and muscled, their spongy marrow pulsing with new blood. Bones, durable bones. They last beyond us, dense and calcified, tombed or catacombed, buried in layers of dark loam and clay. Fragments remain after the long fire. In Kutná Hora, centuries of bones decorate the Church of All Saints. Garlands of skulls hang from the ceiling, and a chandelier made with every bone of the human body. Bones arranged as bells, urns, and candelabras. Bones latticed across the walls, crisscross snowflakes and stars, hexagonal flowers, pyramids of skulls, hollow-eyed saints, nameless, perpetually watching. 3. An evening without stars. Our bonfire blazes, white smoke rising from a circle of stones, our midsummer night of flame and shadow. Our good fire of riddance, dead fish and marsh grass, cigarette butts and firecracker shells, chopped brush and piled trash. Our sin fire of riddance, sharp words flung across a room, the fear of loss, old stains and fevers, the deep sigh of despair, dark flies clustered around death, burnt offerings ushered up to the clouds. In the morning, we'll rake the ash for missed coins or lost earrings, any small residue of worth, and we'll find, as we always do, a few fragments of bone and wonder whose shame was too tough to burn. Like a seraph, I'll hold a live coal to your lips. I'll tell you it's safe, an atonement, and you will not speak. The next poem has 5 sections, and it explores the life of a of a young woman who has to come to terms with an illness, and I often write about chronic illnesses and the relationship that illness has to one's identity. I think when someone has an illness, it changes who they think they are, how they perceive themselves. And by the end of this poem, the speaker has the young woman has an experience that helps her come to terms with her new self. There is also a reference to a myth in the poem of the soul leaving the body through the mouth when someone dies. It's called Pins and Needles. The shot. Saucepans clattered, water sloshed, then popped as it heated, her daddy humming as he waited for the boil, not soup, but needles and glass syringes, the vials of inocula lined up on the counter, one for each of their bared arms, but not hers, not this time, and she slammed and locked her bedroom door, her 6-year-old muscles heaving the bed against the door. The collection. She cupped the housefly hovering over the butter, then netted a firefly, a mosquito puffed with blood, a black-bellied hornet, stinger flaring as it tumbled into the jar. Then her prize, a butterfly, tiger swallowtail, 4 black stripes on gold hind wings, downy blue spots near the tail, it too etherized among the cotton balls, all of them stilled, intact. The tingling. The tingling brushed the back of her neck, then sparked down her spine, hot and fast like sparklers. Tiny flecks of fire, pins and needles jabbing her flesh until it was numb. Paresthesia, the doctor said later. For her, the first symptom, the first sign of her new calling. Her body's random failings, vertigo, blindness, the clumsy falls, and the small miracles that followed, the sparklers fizzing out, nothing broken, the red flecks floating around the edges, haloing her sister's head. The shot. This time, she filled the syringe herself. She tapped the bubbles up and daubed alcohol on her right thigh and pushed the needle into her muscle, her hand steady and breath measured. She knew the child was there, in the corner, unafraid, speechless. And the final section, the resurrection. Diptera, Hymenoptera, all of them pinned to the board, labeled, except the tiger swallowtail. She pulled it from the jar, whispered, Papilio glaucus, savoring its name like a communion wafer, hardly feeling the fringe of stilled wings cupped in her hand. She pushed the pin through its body and remembered the trip to Mariposa, butterflies billowing across the sky, blotting the sun, and the talk of death, how the soul escapes the body in the last breath, hovers for an instant over the cold mouth, rapturous. Then the prick of grief, so sudden and sharp, when the wings in her hand quivered and the butterfly, pinned still in its middle, took flight. The image from that poem, the final image, is one that I experienced. I think most of us probably had to do the bug collection for a science project.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened, and it was the end of science projects for me when I saw that butterfly fly away with the pin in it.